Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Conscious Grief series. I am very excited to be here with Kat B, who is an international evidential medium. You are a Reiki master, a clinical hypnotherapist, and a connection coach and tutor. And I've already been crying since we started talking, and I'm so delighted to be connected with you. We've been connected through Helping Parents Heal, and I've interviewed the lovely Elizabeth and Irene a couple of times for this series, and I found Kat through their amazing organization. So welcome, Kat.
Thank you for having me, Tara. It's lovely to be here. It's a blessing to be here under the representation of Helping Parents Heal as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is speaking to mediums and interviewing them about the connection that we can have with our loved ones who are not here anymore. But it's always interesting to know, how you became a medium, because we both share a background in fashion. That's but right. Here you are now speaking with spirit. So how on earth did that happen?
So my journey to working with spirit is quite hilarious. I had a diving accident. It was a pivotal moment in my life. I had a diving accident. I was not consciously born a medium. I'd say I was quite intuitive. I did have some experiences when I was a teenager, but I wrote them off as kind of weird moments or coincidences. And I didn't really think much about them, I'd be really honest. And they were odd things, like I'd say, oh, I'm going to meet my friend in the cafe down there. And my friend Charlotte would say, but he's not going to be there. How do you know that he's going to be there? And I was like, I just have this intuition that he's going to be there and I'm just going to go. And I was probably 13 years old. And sure enough, I went. And she was like, I'm going to follow you because I just don't believe you. Sure enough, the guy that I wanted to talk to was sat in the cafe. And so she'd be like, oh. So I had little odd moments like that had happened to me that I just thought I was a little bit weird or a bit quirky. And I just had these like moments of just knowingness. But I just thought they were coincidence. So I wrote that off. However, fast forward to the age of like 32 and I have this diving accident just before I'm turning 33. And I basically had a bit of a near-death experience. I never went over to the other side. I had this moment in the water where I knew I was going to die. I just thought I'm going to die. And I had started to suffer overexertion and I'd gone to the surface. I wasn't under the water, but the tanks were heavy. The weather was very bad conditions, and nobody had realised that I'd gone to the surface because everything had happened very quickly. And as I have this moment where I try to signal to the people that are on the nearest boat, which is about a mile away, they just don't. They wave back to me and they think, oh no, they think I'm a tourist, or what am I going to do? So I was like, oh, so in this moment in the water, I think this is it then. I'm going to die. And all I can sort of explain to you is this beautiful peace, tranquility, and it was almost silence. It was just very, very powerful. It probably only lasted a few moments, but it felt like ages to me, and it felt like bliss. And I just remember thinking in this moment, well, if I'm going to die, I just want to say thanks. I've had the most amazing life. Thank you. And but I'm sort of like, there's only one thing. I waited 8 years to get married. I really wanted to get married. Are you kidding me? You're going to take me now? I was like, please, I just want to get married. And I'm not religious, but this is the weird thing. My mum was a little bit of a pushy mum when I was younger. She's not pushy, actually. That's a lie. But she was very conscientious about schools, and she wanted me to go to a good school in the area, which is Church of England school. And so at the school we'd recited the Lord's Prayer. And so in this moment in the water, suddenly I become very religious. The moment I think I'm going to die. And I said the Lord's Prayer, but I think I said it more as a blessing of like, well, this is it. I'm kind of come to acceptance with it. And but as I said the prayer, something really, really interesting happened. The energy pulled back, and as I went under, the diving instructor came up. And the next thing I know is I wake up on a boat a mile away from where I had been, and I'm alive, but I'm not in a great state. But this moment starts the synchronicity, and I was in Ibiza at the time. I go home and I have some sort of experiences when I go home, but I basically, a woman that I worked with in the fashion industry recommended that I went for a series of massages. And I'm not a person that really pampers herself that much. I'm from North Yorkshire. I'm like, we didn't go for massages every weekend or anything like that. So this was a bit of a treat. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's a good idea to release the tension and the muscles from the accident and the shock and everything. So I enrolled on these 6 sessions. And on the last session, the guy, Philip, that was treating me, his car broke down. And the receptionist said, do you want to go for the massage, or do you want to take the locum that's in, because there could be a 3-month waiting list for Philip? And I said, oh, do you know what, he's done such a good job of releasing all the tension in the body, it'd be a shame not to get it sorted today. So I took this new therapist, and as I walked into the room that day, it was really strange. I had what I call like a soul recognition, where I walked in and I thought for a moment, God, I know you. And then I looked at the person again and I was like, oh no, we've never met before. That's weird. And as I went to lie down on the table that day, we had these crazy synchronicities. So, you know, he say I've just got back from a trip, and I said, oh, I've just got back from India myself. And he said, oh, I've just been in India. What part? And we started having this conversation, and it was kind of when I said, hasn't India got an amazing aura? And I was meaning as in atmosphere, spirituality, or kind of humble. There's a beauty about India that I absolutely love. And from the minute I landed on my first plane to India, I felt like I'd come home. It was a really weird feeling that I had. And of course he was talking about auras, the spiritual world, mediumship, and I didn't have a clue. And so we were talking at kind of cross purposes, if you like, on different levels. But every time he said something, we'd have a synchronicity. So my grandfather's a farmer, his grandfather's a farmer, you know, the same kind of produce. Like every conversation had this moment, to the point where when I got to turn over onto my back, I was actually quite nervous about turning over, because something had alerted me that this is a bit weird. And as he went to put his hand over my back, he said, oh, you've got a blockage of energy in your lower back. You've had an accident. You've had a diving accident. He was very specific, Tara. Mm. And I said, I have, but I haven't told anybody here. So how do you know? And he said, I can see it. I said, what do you mean you can see it? Do I have to label a diving accident person walking here across my head? No. What do you mean? And I started to laugh. And he goes, I can see it in my mind's eye. I can see the accident. I said, I can't see the accident. I can't even look at the accident in my mind's eye. You can't possibly see that accident in your mind's eye. But then he goes to tell me. And so this was the moment when everything changed, because he says to me, look, I'm going to show you something, and I shouldn't really show you in this corporate environment, but I'm going to take a risk, because if I don't, this could end up turning to cancer or something else in your body that's quite nasty, and I want to get it out, and I know that I'm going to have to sort of do this in order to kind of get your attention. And he said, just sit up. And he asked me to sit up. And he sort of scanned my back with his hand, didn't touch me. And then he asked me to lay back down, and he manipulated he was trained in cranial osteopathy, and he manipulated the energy in my lower neck. And then he treated me with what I now know is Reiki, but at the time he didn't explain what it was. And so he asked me to sit back up, and he held his hand this time at my lower back for about 5 minutes. And then my whole body started to convulse. And as he got to the back of my chest, the whole of my body started to convulse. And from this moment onwards, it was like an eruption. I burst out crying. And it's really interesting, because I live with doctors at university, and they started sending me all these papers. Oh, Reiki doesn't work. Columbia University say they can't find a link, and all these kind of things. And I read the papers, I found them very interesting, but I was like, well, they clearly hadn't worked or used somebody that had post-traumatic stress disorder, because this guy didn't touch me. And my whole body convulsed, and this energy came up, and I burst burst out crying. And when I say crying, it was like a scream. I literally erupted. Now, what we didn't know is that his enthusiasm and my curiosity combined had caused a rupture of the Kundalini energy and psychic energy in the body. And over the next few days, things would start to get very interesting for me. So I started having visions. I started having experiences. I was in a yoga class actually, and I went to do a swan dive. And as I swan dived down, suddenly this vision appeared in front of me. It was like a TV had been turned on in front of me, and I could see very clearly images and like a little video play. And the next day, that sort of night, I sort of got a bit unnerved and I wasn't sleeping very well. And the next night I started to have experiences where I was awake at sort of 2 a.m, and this screen just opened out in front of me, and I saw like Roman soldiers on this screen and this Bedouin tent in the background, and I heard them talking about a battle and a strategy to solve this battle. And suddenly I don't know what happened, but I just said in my head, Gabrielle, is that you? And suddenly they went, the characters in the sort of lucid dream, if you will, or the kind of scene just totally changed and said, "No, Gabrielle, my name's Michael. Michael. Michael, I've come to cut the cord." Well, I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. The next thing I knew, I felt a pain in the stomach and I fell forward. And I was shaking because I was like, hang on a minute, my dream or that vision or whatever that was just spoke back to me. Like, what is that? And then there was nothing there when I'm like, hello, there's nothing there. It just closed. And when it closed, I couldn't experience anything. But at this point, I'm on the floor and I literally crawled into the front room. And actually, it was yoga again that was the only thing that seemed to release this energy. But as I started to do the yoga moves, the energy started to rise upwards. And I wasn't trained in Kundalini. I didn't understand it at all. And it took me many years to actually work out and understand with the spirit world what it was when I finally got the knowledge to be able to do that. And so I started having very mediumistic experiences. And for somebody who's never been mediumistic, it's actually quite scary. It was a very close line. Was I mentally ill? Was I having psychosis? Because I was seeing and hearing things. But here's the thing. I took a bit of a leap of faith, Tara, and I went and followed the messages that they gave me. And their messages were to go home to Yorkshire, very safe, back to my hometown, back to my family. I was asked to harvest fruit for about 9 days, which is really strange. I never of my own accord. Every day that I got there, can you take the apples from the apple tree? Can you come do blueberry picking? Can you come raspberry picking? It was the time of the harvest. And it kind of made me laugh because my grandfather was a farmer. So I kind of was giggling, thinking, what is going on? But I did what I was instructed to do. And every time I did what I was instructed to do, I got rewarded with more information. And the accumulation of it is that I saw my grandfather, and he said, he'd been dead 11 years at that point, and he said to me, it's the hay bale season. You need to go back to the farm, and you need to, you're looking for the name Sutcliffe. And he showed me black and white postcards, and he said, the hay bale season, the hay bale season. And I wondered why he called the harvest the hay bale season. I thought that was a bit strange. And then one day when I was picking the fruit, I was directed, I'd gone for this walk that they directed me on. I saw this raven, and then I realised that they wanted me to go to Ravenscar, which is an area of Yorkshire. I went to Ravenscar, and it overlooks Robin Hood's Bay. And they said black and white postcards go to Robin Hood's Bay. So I went to Robin Hood's Bay. I took my mother and my mother-in-law with me, and as witnesses. And as my mum decided to go into this antique shop, and in the antique shop was a suitcase that had my granddad's initials on it. And as we looked at the initials, I suddenly said, oh my gosh, I can see the black and white postcards. I can see one with a hay bale on it. I ran outside of the shop and I picked up this postcard, and the postcard was by a photographer called Frank Meadows Sutcliffe. And it was a picture of a hay bale, and on the back of it was my great-grandfather's name 3 generations back. And I was like, I've got the postcards!
Oh my God.
I'm not crazy. This information checks out. But what was even more amazing is my sister, really into genealogy, bless her, she's done the family tree. And we're now able to get all these postcards and matched them. It got even more amazing because I said to the guy, look, they're telling me that there's a display copy, a book that connects to these postcards. Do you have it? He said, I've only got a display copy. And I said, can I buy it off you? And I said, I'll pay double. I just want this book. And he was like, no, I can't give you the display copy, but there is an art gallery in Whitby, and if you want to go to the art gallery, I'll give you the address. And so my poor mum and my mother-in-law were like, oh no, we're not going anymore, we're our goose chase. I said, we're off to Whitby. We went to Whitby, and sure enough, we go to this art gallery, and 20% of the photographs in the art gallery are actually photographs of my family, which we never knew existed. And so my sister does the family tree, and we match the photographs to the names on the family tree. So I was given evidence, and once you've got evidence changes everything, because when the medical world is saying, oh, it could be this, it could be that, I sort of smiling to myself, but I was like, yeah, but I think I got the message that my grandfather wanted to give me, and I think now I'm not as frightened as I was. I think I'm going to be okay, because I know that the person who loves me most is here, and he sent me a sign. So I'm not going to do anything, but you can monitor me, you can watch me, you can do whatever you like. If I don't solve this, if my symptoms and everything doesn't come under control in the next 40 hours, then I'll admit myself. I just, just give me 48 hours. And as luck should happen, it all calmed down, and the spirit world started to tell me to jog. They started telling me how to manage energy. They started teaching me. I heard Gabrielle tell me and give me very precise instructions. It also shared things with my husband to let him know that I was okay, because I said, they're saying that the phone's going to ring at 2:05 dead on, and when you pick it up, no one will be there, but it's just so that you know that what I'm telling you is the truth. And sure enough, the clock hit 2:05, the phone rang, my husband went to answer it. There was no one there. And don't get me wrong, we were both scared at the time, but what we realised is this intelligence was loving. And it was not frightening in any way, shape or form. It was trying to help, it was trying to heal, and it was very loving. And the generosity of that spirit was to educate me and to be intelligent. And once the fear went, and I realised, you asked me in one of your questions that you gave me, why is it that mediumship's so misunderstood? Well, we've had many years of I think mediumship empowers you to make your own decisions if you use it wisely. And sometimes those decisions are different to the decisions of the authority. In this situation, it was doctors for me. They wanted me to consider that I might have a mental illness or be I'm hearing things, I'm seeing things. It is scary to them. But my intuition and the guidance that I was given is saying, no, you've got evidence, you've been told messages, you followed the messages, and you've now got evidence, proof that what we're saying to you is true. So I have to then take a different line, and it takes quite a lot of courage to sort of say, I'm really sorry, but I don't agree with you. And I appreciate that you're very educated people and that you're trying to help me, but I need to investigate this in my own way. And I'm not closing the door to your help. I'm absolutely not. I'm very open-minded, but I want to see if there's another way of looking at the world first. And so that was my way of dealing with this. And I dealt with it very gently. I was very loving with the doctors. I live with doctors at university, so I adore my friends who are doctors. They do amazing work. And, it was scary for them as well, because there was a real mix in my group. Some of them were like, oh, we really want you to go down the medical route. And some of them were like, no, you're right, Kate, follow your intuition. And so there was a real divide in my friendship group as well. So that was a little bit hard to manage. And, and some people, it's really interesting. You become spiritual and you start to learn and develop. And I went to learn to close down, first of all. I just wanted to go away. Stop the noises. Go away. I've got the message. It's fine. I'm all right. And then once I'd learned to close it down, and, I went to Conan Doyle Centre at the Spiritual Association Great Britain. I saw 2 different mediums. I didn't tell them anything. I was very sceptical at the time. I kept the postcards that I had in my bag, and the first medium says, have you got the postcards? Can I have the black and white one with a bridge on it? And I'm like, oh, here you go. And then he gives me this amazing story, and he says, I'm
just going to butt in for a second, because I really love hearing about your stories because they're so fabulous, but I'm just conscious of the listeners as well.
Okay, yeah.
And thinking about how the work that you do and the connection that you have you know, you talked about people who could be a little cynical about this work or think it's, you know, all rubbish. But how do you feel like connecting with our loved ones in spirit can assist the grieving process specifically?
I think it can be really transformative, and I sort of tell you for why is that um, you can. There's clients that I've seen that have gone to counselling and traditional things, and all these things do work. I've had grief counselling myself in the past, and I think it's an amazing piece of work. So I don't want to sort of. I think this is a complementary service, if you will, to the other services available by the medical world. And I would recommend all of them. You try everything you can to work through what you need to do, and everybody's going to be different and everyone's going to be unique. And I also say mediumship's not for everybody. Some people will navigate towards it and find it very useful, and some people it won't resonate with them, and that's okay. You have to find the modality, if you will, that does the work for you. But if you're open-minded and you are able to see a good recommended medium, and it needs to be somebody who's certified and has got a good reputation so that you know you're in safe hands. And I think that's the thing about Helping Parents Heal that's really amazing, is that they have tested all their mediums and their resources, and they only work with people that have got a really good reputation. So whether it's directly through a spiritual medium or you start to have experiences yourself, because let's be honest here, the majority of people who lose somebody, a high percentage of them, maybe 50% of them, will report having one-to-one contact or experiences with a loved one after they transition. It's not uncommon. And I think that was the other thing that I realised when I started working with Helping Parents Heal. I thought my experiences were perhaps unique to me. I was very naive when I suddenly hit this site that had, at the time, 14,000, now has 20,000 people on it. And I realised that the majority of them are seeing signs, having experiences, synchronicities, all these wonderful things. So the presence of our loved ones come direct to us. You don't need a medium necessarily if you understand how to interpret the signs and work with that consciousness. It's open to every single one of us. So that's the first thing that I say. So don't think for 1 minute you have to come to somebody like me to have an experience with the spirit world. You don't. In the same way it came direct to me, it can come direct to you. But you have to be open to receiving, and you have to be aware of what it is that you're looking for, and have an understanding that's grounded in reality of how to deal with it as well, because as you can see from my experience, it can cause you to feel fearful because of all the media exposure that, you know, thrillers sell, don't they? And I think there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about mediumship in the public eye, and so people have this perception of charlatans and people that are coming from this from a different angle. I'm coming from it from a very healing angle. I lost children myself in pregnancy, and I have a great empathy for bereaved parents as well as the bereaved community in general. I work with a lot of people with very different levels of grief, varying levels of grief, and you need to be educated and have an understanding in grief to be able to support them and manage them in an effective way, and know when it is the time for them to come to a medium and when maybe they're too vulnerable and you need to say to them, I'm really sorry, I don't want to do the reading for you today, not because I can't or not because I'm not willing to, but I think perhaps you need some extra support from somebody else first. And to be able to use your insight to do what's right for the client, not what's right for you. You know, go right by your spirit as well as the spirit of the spirit world. But if you are open, this presence of realizing that the continuation of relationship continues means that the loss that's attached with this finite feeling that death, which doesn't discriminate, let's face it, it can affect you, it can affect me, is a final moment. Death is really only a couple of minutes transition, and, you know, or a period towards transition, depending on what's taken somebody over. But then that life and that energy continues. As Einstein says, energy transforms. It can't be destroyed. It has to be converted into something else. So what we're dealing with now is a higher level of consciousness that hasn't got a physical body, but has an intelligence and can communicate in different ways with different people. And I say that very honestly because every medium that I've seen works very differently. And the parents and the people that I have helped connect to their own loved ones, they all work and experience spirit in a different way. But all those ways bring many, many blessings. They bring joy again. They bring the ability to let go of the grief, to love again, to continue the journey in the relationship. And when you realize that that suffering and loss has been taken away, that releases many things in a physical way. People start sleeping again, people stop having panic attacks, people start to communicate and connect with one another in the earth plane, because the most important thing about mediumship isn't just about connection to people across the veil. It's about the connections that spirit make here for us in this physical world as well. And I can't tell you the amount up to through signs or synchronicities or experiences, because they want me to meet those people. Even the way that you're here today and I met Elizabeth is extraordinary. I can tell you so many stories. I can just talk. I'm a typical Brit. I can talk. But I've got these really fascinating stories, these really amazing experiences that bring joy not just to me. I have over 100 5-star reviews. I have a lot of emails in my inbox where people say, it's the first night I've slept. I've been laughing again. I'm remembering and recalling all the funny things that you were telling me. God, you hit the nail on the head. It was so fabulously funny. It was my son's personalities, even your mannerisms. When you started gesturing and it was his gestures, it really freaked me out. But I was just smiling because I just knew. I felt the essence of his personality. And then the tears come because you're just like full of this joy of like moments. And some connections are very sort of not mild or passive, they're transient, and some amaze you and they stand out in your mind. And I've got a few. I could tell you, but I'm scared that I'm going to take more of your time, Tash. Some of them are kind of like really extraordinary stories, and they're stories that even make me sit up thinking, how can this possibly be possible? How can they do this? Literally, like, I'm on the end of my seat and I'm like, God, this is the most amazing movie that I'm in. It's not even the most amazing experience you're having. I'm now wondering what the hell's going on, because they're so clever. They're so clever at how they bring us all in and connect us all together. And that's the beauty of spirit. It's all about connection. It's about this beautiful unconditional love. And what I'd say to any viewer here is unconditional love will never, never hurt you. But if it means that you're sleeping at night, you stop having panic attacks, you reform a connection with your loved ones, and it helps you heal, then it can't be wrong for me. For me, that has a service, and there's something in that. If, however, you go and you have an experience and it doesn't resonate with you, well, that's okay as well. I think we're all different, and I think we've got to accept that. And I'm not the kind of person that would ever enforce my views or put any pressure on anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. Come of your own accord. Don't come because somebody's forced you to do it, even if it's been gifted to you and it doesn't sit right. Do what sits and resonates in your heart. And if you do that and you operate from a space of love and loving intent, I don't think anything will ever hurt you.
Yeah. And I was thinking, this past week, I was actually reading the Helping Parents Heal newsletter yesterday, and the recent shootings that have happened in the school in America, and just, thinking about like the human dimension. And sometimes it can be tough and really hard. And for people who are listening and, really in their struggle right now, like you have so much experience with communicating with spirit and knowing more than me and many, many other people about how it is there as opposed to how it is here. And I was just kind of curious, like, if spirit had any kind of insights for us while we're here and how we should be dealing with this dimension that we're in.
Oh, I'm smiling. There's a couple of things that I'm sort of going to share with you and let you into a bit of a secret. So I don't know a great deal about the spirit world because I haven't been there. Mm-hmm. I've been there in my unconscious state, but not in my conscious state. So I can't tell you what it looks like or what it feels like. I have had some insights from people that have had near-death experiences that have told me their experiences, but they're their experiences, they're not my experiences, so I can't talk firsthand from what the spirit will like. But what I believe is that they're in this dimension, that we're vibrating at a lower level energy and they're spinning a lot faster. That I've seen one of my guides in the physical very, very clearly. In fact, I've seen a couple of them. And on these amazing moments that I've had these insights where they've changed my vibration to show themselves, what I've realized is that they're spinning at a faster rate, and the eyes and my body is the fail, that I can't pick up the information or the intelligence. So we know that a cat, for instance, hears, and a mouse hears noises that we don't hear. And so in the consciousness has to be these sounds and noises and frequencies that the human body doesn't pick up. Same with a bee that sees infrared or ultraviolet. We don't see those colours necessarily, but it doesn't mean they don't exist. Well, that's what I think the spirit world is. I think the spirit world is right here, a dimension within a dimension. We're a house within a house. We're in this space together. And it may look, oh, sorry, my phone's going off. It may look very different. Sorry, just a typical English accent. It may look very, very different. It's not the spirit world. I point, hello. Just the spirit world, like. So I think actually our reality of what we're dealing with is a lot more credible in here. And in astral or kind of dream states, the lucid dreaming and astral states, you could actually argue it's very like your dream state. That's probably a good way of looking at it. The minute that you walk through a wall, or you put your hand through a wall in a dream state, it's probably the same level of consciousness. And actually people do have really good connection in lucid dreaming and through astral traveling of reconnecting with loved ones as well. So there's whole different dimensions that you can talk about. But I mean, in terms of the grief in America at the moment, our hearts go out to these people that have been, have lost their children and had this trauma and experience. And I think what I'd say to you in that situation, Tara, is those people need a settling in period. They need, first of all, to come together with the shock and work together as a community or in their individual households to allow that experience or that shock or that, to bring it into conscious awareness, to feel what they're feeling, to go through what they're going through, and to gain the support from the medical teams and the people around them that I'm sure are running in and rushing in to support those people. You want to give it 3 to 6 months potentially. I mean, I have had some parents that have been absolutely adamant, no, I want to see you at 5 weeks. We've made this decision and we're not taking a no for an answer. And I have had very transformative experiences where even my own judgment of saying wait 3 to 6 months has been overruled by somebody. And because they've been very strong-minded about it, I've gone forward and actually found that for them it was the right decision, that it actually did transform their grief and heal them very fast. But they were adamant that's what they wanted. In a situation like this, where you've got very vulnerable people, there's a settling in period where they need to be allowed to experience their grief the way that it presents itself, with the people that they need to support them, around them and their communities. And we get this global grief when a situation is public like this. That gives another element actually to grief that is very hard to deal with. One of my clients, her son died in a terrorist attack, and that country or that town or that city that the incident happens in then owns a piece of your child, which is very, very difficult, because you don't really want their life to be about this association, the way that they transition. They've had years of life. I know there's a lot of young children in this situation, but in the incident of my client, he was 21. He'd had had a good life with really great experiences. And we hold him into account on this one day that transitions this one event. And it's very, very hard for him in spirit to be held in this space when he's full of joy and wants to be moved beyond this. I don't want to keep the dead. If they're alive and the energy is there and they can give us evidence. So I think there has to be a settling in period, and I think it has to be the choice of the people involved as to whether that's the right route for them to go. Everyone's going to be different. And as I say, you should feel your way. That's the only thing you can do when you've got grief, is you feel your way through these experiences. I feel my way through mediumship. I never presume anything. I'm very non-judgmental. And I try to come from a very loving space, that it's not that nothing surprises me anymore, but I allow spirit to unfold the story for me. So I think these people have got to feel their way. And I think in terms of support here for this dimension, I think if we can love each other and love one another, and work from a place of love, limitless love, and be courageous with that love, to have good intentions, to find connections with one another as well as spirit, to explore and not rule out the spirit world, to include them and to investigate them and to look at the science of it. There's a lot of great science coming out of America at the moment, where they've wired up mediums to brain monitors, and they've looked at the evidence that they're providing, and they've tested them. And I think all these things, they add or influence our understanding. Science and the arts need to come together. We need to have a fusion. That's what I think spirit would say, where we're open-minded and we explore. We don't frighten one another. We just explore, what are the possibilities, what is there out there, and how far can we go to understand what's happening. And I think consciousness, as physical beings, we are amazing people, Tara, incredible, magnificent beings, and I don't even think we tap the surface of what we're capable of experiencing. And I think that's what we need to explore, this beauty, this magic, this amazement that is the spirit world.
Yeah, and the physical world too, right? Because
absolutely
in the spirit world, that's a different thing to what we have here. Yeah.
So our experiences are here. It's their interaction in this environment. I don't ever go to the spirit world. They come here. I blend and harmonise with them here. So when people say to me, what's the spirit world like? I haven't got a clue. And that's the honest truth. I don't have a clue. I won't know until I get there. I haven't got a clue because I think it's here. And so, I find it fascinating. Some people who've had near-death experiences will tell you completely different stories. And I think that's, again, how we've got to work together. We've got to be open to share, and that's what makes a community and connection so important. Everybody's experiences of this world and our perceptions of it are different. So why not celebrate the differences and explore them, as opposed to putting them in a box, a Pandora's box, and saying they don't exist? It's not true.
It's not true. Like, to have an open mind and an open heart. And I really love what you were sharing about just being in a place of love and connection with one another while we're here, and a place of curiosity, I think. And when you were saying consciousness, and I was thinking about like the theme of this being Conscious Grief series, and I wondered what your interpretation would be of conscious grief.
Conscious grief, that's an interesting one, Tara. I think it's a bit interesting because when people are in trauma, or they go through the trauma of grief, there's many different stages of grief, and we could argue that they don't flow, or some people talk about the 6 stages of grief and stuff. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think there's lots of different emotions and feelings that happen through the grief process, and they're different for everybody, and different people go through things at different stages. But I am open that there are definitely different levels of grief, and I think sometimes you're unconscious in that grief. You're numb, you're blurred, you can't function. It almost feels like you've got baby brain. If you've ever had a baby, you'll know those moments where you just go through life, but your mind's somewhere else. You're in stages of grief where you're traumatized. Sometimes, not always. Some people have very different experiences. Some people have prepared for grief because their loved one's been in a long transition and they've done all the things that they wanted to do. Some people that I work with, they haven't been able to say the words. They didn't get the chance to say goodbye. They didn't get the closure that they needed. They don't know what happened in those final moments. And so I guess what I think some people go through grief consciously and some people go through grief unconsciously. And I think conscious grief is about education. It's about understanding the resources, and there are some amazing people. One of my favourite people is David Kessler. If you have ever got to meet David or his partner Paul, they're amazing people. David's book, what is it?
Finding
Meaning. Yeah. It's one of my favourite books, and I think it's very straightforward. It's very easy, and he's a great educator. So in terms of conscious grief, you really need to be able to read, absorb a lot of information, and many people do when they lose a loved one. The amount that they read or the amount that they watch to absorb information, it's maybe the first exposure to the afterworld or this idea of the afterworld, and it's been going on for centuries. We've been investigating the other side or the mysteries for many thousands of decades. You can find it right back in Greek history. So we've always been exploring this conscious state, if you will, but I think some people go through grief unconsciously, and they're the ones that perhaps have a prolonged experience in grief. The ones that educate themselves, I tend to find, I don't want to make a stereotype or generalize, but in a large proportion of the ones that educate themselves or get help from a diverse amount of people, from doctors, the medical world, therapists, healers, some people go to Reiki, some people go for counselling, some people do hypnotherapy and EMDR to stop some of the trauma, because sometimes you have to deal with the trauma before you can get to the grief. So there are different layers or stages depending on your experience that you might need to look at to unlock the grief or the pain that you're in. But basically, conscious grief for me is about reducing suffering. It's about transforming grief so that you can, it's going to sound weird to some of the viewers, get back to a joyful, happy state of being and celebrate life and love. And, that's going to sound really strange to somebody who's just lost their loved one. They're going to feel very angry with the words that I'm using there and going, there's the last thing that I feel. I'm gutted that they're not here. But then another story unfolds, and as you chip back the layers and you work with consciousness, you start to realise that there is a different way to see the world.
Wow, 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 wow.
That's a lot.
Amazing, Kat. They're just like so much.
Amazing. Sorry, I know I can talk. I'm just like that.
No, you're amazing. I want to, we have a couple more minutes, and I'd love for you to share with people how they can find you. Do you have a long waiting list for people?
I have a 6-month waiting list at the moment. It does keep bouncing up and down depending on what I'm doing. I try to do some. I do a lot of private work, obviously, and my waiting list at the moment for private work is 6 months. I can get people in a little bit faster for clinical hypnosis and things like that, because I limit the amount of mediumship readings I do today to help my own energy. I can't deplete my own energy. I have to keep that life force very strong to be able to support the people that I do, particularly when I'm dealing with heavy grief, because it takes a lot more energy from me. So what I try to do is I incorporate teaching and my hypnotherapy around that, and I can fast track people in for certain things. But the average waiting list is about 6 months at the moment, and but I do a lot of free things online. I'm doing one this week for helping parents heal. So if you're in the communities that I work within, you might be able to get exposure through group events that I do for free, and talks and things like that. I try to make myself available for questions and to demonstrate for people that have never experienced it before, so they can see what they think, and if they resonates with them, great, and if it doesn't, then it's okay, they've had an experience. So I am out there in the community. You can find me on my Facebook page, Kat Bailey, or Medium Kat B. So I've got 2 pages there. I'm on Instagram, but I don't use Instagram as much as I should. I need to get better at it. I'm terribly old-fashioned, I'm sorry. I'm on my website, www.kat-b.com, so that's the best place to find me. There's contact pages there.
We'll have the link to that underneath.
Yes, absolutely. And you can email me on mediumcatb@gmail.com as well. So I try to get back to people within 48 hours, but if there's a high influx of people, it might take a little bit longer, but normally I get back, even if it's just to sort of say to you, I'm dealing with the queries and I'll be back with you. Yeah, because I'm typically British as well in that respect. I try to do everything myself. I'm hilarious. I literally, I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm a secretary, I'm a one-man band. But do you know what? I love it at this moment in time. There will come a time when I can't enjoy it and I have to change and I have to evolve like everybody else. But at this moment in time, I like being at the sort of at the desk and kind of with people and chatting to people. So I'm available is what I'd say. And and you can contact me in many, many different ways. Helping Parents Heal, I'm on their providers list as well. You can contact me through Helping Parents Heal, and if there is a situation that's an emergency, Elizabeth will normally contact me or fast track something in. So I try to work. I was a UK affiliate for Helping Parents Heal for 4 years, and many people might not know that. So I've worked with grief in all its guises. So my experience of that is quite broad, and I've been very fortunate, like you, Tara, to interview some of the most amazing people that work in our industry. And so I've got a lot of knowledge at my fingertips and can direct you to the right sites or the right people. But Helping Parents Heal is a great place to start. There are some fantastic other blogs and places out there as well. Give a shout out to Anne Marie at Voices of My Angels, who works with children in the spirit world as well. She's got an amazing group. Sachs House, who here in the UK, who do Friday nights for all bereaved parents. They've got an open doors policy as well, of letting people in just to chat and talk. So don't feel isolated. One of the biggest things about grief is that you can feel quite isolated. Some people don't know how to react to the news or to say the right things, and sometimes people try to say the right things and they say the wrong things trying to say the right things, or you're so sensitive at this time that you misinterpret what they mean and what they're saying. So having a group of people, these support groups that are out there for people that have lost loved ones, whether it's, there's loads of different communities out there, but find one that resonates with you, and if you like it and it works for you, enjoy it. But I know that you're in safe hands with the group that I work with, and I'm very proud of the work that they do. They're expanding all the time, but we really do see the beautiful side of grief, and we see the awful side of it too. And that in the group there are many people like the Caring Listeners that have got expertise in all different levels of experience. We've got some great psychologists that work with us as well. A shout out to Linda McCarthy there, who wrote The Myth of Dying. Her son Sean's been integral to my journey, one of my favourites in the spirit world. You meet new friends. That's the other thing that I'd say to you is, I never knew Sean in life, but I know him now in spirit, and he makes me laugh. He must be here today because he's wanting a shout out. But I meet these incredible spirits that become my friends, and that might seem strange to people who can't be consciously seen, but just in like we do in life, you have a coffee or a drink with somebody, you become friends, you like their energy. I know he's here because I can feel the energy changing. He's making me laugh. You just know that they become part of your everyday life and your adventure. So, and that enhances who you are, and they help you from the other side as well. You see, that's the great thing, is Sean will bring me people that had had similar experiences to him, and he will make me aware of the references. And so we realise that the work that we do here is also work for the spirit world. So I think that's really important, that we're ambassadors for them as well. And sort of, yeah, so you can find me at many, many different, there's lots of books actually. The Myth of Dying, I've had quite a few books that have been written recently. The Beauty of the Grieving Mother. There's lots of shout outs with my details in some of these books as well, where I've done readings and people have written about them. So you can find me in many guises, and hopefully maybe by the end of the year my own book will come out and you'll be able to find me through my own book. So, I'm writing them as I speak, so fingers crossed. I'm not as disciplined as some people are, so I'm like, oh.
Trust me, I know it's hard.
No, it's not as easy, is it?
To find the time, but I have loved meeting you. I'm so grateful.
Oh, it's been a blessing, Tara. I hope we see each other again.
I really hope so. This is the first English medium I've interviewed. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to know you and be in the same city. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
And thank you so much for everybody who's been watching and listening.
Oh, bye. Thank you.